LMCS to provide you with a plan?
I think from Friday afternoon we were
Friday
asking
afternoon.
for a plan. Yes.
Yeah. And who asked, please?
I guess that would have been Colin at some stage or Catherine at some stage. I personally didn't ask for a specific plan until on Sunday.
Is it your understanding and therefore
it is my understanding, yes.
Is it your understanding and therefore your evidence that Paria or someone at Paria asked LMCS for a plan on Friday afternoon?
That is my understanding.
Yeah, all right, thank you. LMCS asked. So LMCS were asked for a plan on Friday afternoon by Paria, and you're not able to say who it was that asked that.
It would either be Colin or Catherine would be one of
one
those.
or the other.
One or the other, right?
Either Colin Piper or Catherine Balkisoon. And is it your case then that you were not provided with such a plan?
No plan ever reached to me from
right.
LMCS written. There were a few verbal mutterings, but no real plan.
No plan reached IMT or me. Is that right?
As far as I know, those are the facts.
And you said earlier, not written, articulated, or drawn outside of a few words.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Maharaj. I interrupted and you were asking. I finished, thank you. You were asking him whether or not he asked for a plan.
Yes, there's one more thing I want to put in from what Mr. Ali said in his witness statement. Look at paragraph 28.
Paragraph 28?
28 at page 2930. He said, from my experience, Paria did not treat the divers and their families fairly, in that Paria did not act quickly and decisively when presented with a viable rescue plan, with a competent and experienced diver who was prepared to undertake the rescue. In my experience, Petrotrin would have never acted like Paria did. You do not agree with that?
That's an opinion.
Yeah, but you do not agree with that?
No.
Okay. I have no further questions for this witness.
Thank you very much. Right. So some hands went up. Do I take it that Mr. Hussein Shah, have I got your name right? Yes. I have? No, that's the first. So I can't hear you. Yes, it's me because and or Mr. Maharaj. Right. Mr. Hussein Shah, yes, you have some questions.
Yes,
right.
I do, Chair.
Can I invite you to restrain yourself such that you're concluded within the half an hour, please?
Yes, I've been trying.
Chairman, is it okay if I face Mr. Shah?
Entirely appropriate for you to face him.
Thank you.
That's not a problem at all.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mohammed.
Good afternoon, sir.
So my name is Asif Hussein Shah, and I represent the Seaman and Waterfront Workers Trade Union. I have a few questions for you. I'm going to try to be as short as possible. Hopefully we can have a good report together.
For sure.
Now, you are the head of the Management Tender Committee at Paria.
Yes.
And in answer to certain questions from Mr. Maharaj,
yes,
you said you did not find it necessary to seek expert assistance in evaluating the tender of LMCS. I believe your words were that you trusted their expert competence as a contractor to bring forward the specific risks.
Yes.
And you also said that you trusted them to bring the expertise, to bring all the expertise through the contractor.
I want to be careful. I'm not sure I said trusted. What I said was based on their track record of having done the job safely about a year ago. So I don't want to bring the word trust into it because we run a business, right? So we work with track record, competence, display of objectives, achieving objectives. So I just want to be clear,
Yes.
make
Well,
sure
let
that,
me
that
be-
you're not paraphrasing me wrongly.
Yeah, let me be fair to you.
Right.
So I'm specifically talking about the evaluation of LMCS's tender.
Okay?
Specifically, the safety, the job safety analysis and
Yes.
emergency response plan.
Yes.
And you said that you not trusted, but you relied upon
Correct.
their competence.
Yes.
Yeah? Now, you also said that there are rules at PARIA, and I believe Mr. Maraj took you through some of them, and that there's also the practical application of those rules.
Yeah.
Now, I want to take you to the witness statement bundle.
Uh-huh.
This is the invitation to tender at page 560.
Which one?
You may not have it. It's all bundled, it's going to be provided to you. Maybe we'll clear away some that you have there.
Thank you.
Just keep your witness statement.
Yes.
This is the scope of work you're referring to, is it, Mr. Hussain? Shah?
Yes. So we're going
Just
to-
a moment, Mr. Hussain. Shah. Let's just give an opportunity for some space to be cleared.
Sure.
Right, lovely. Thank you very much. Yes, your question.
Yes, so we're going to heading 6.3,
6.3.
which deals with safety. And in particular, we're looking at 6.38. And it reads, the
Yes.
contractor, you with me?
Just now.
Sure.
6.38. Yes.
The contractor is responsible for provision of the job safety method statement, job hazard analysis, and risk assessment, which will be reviewed by PARIA's representatives. So you agree that's the rule,
That's the rule.
but that's not necessarily how it was applied. In that PARIA did not necessarily conduct a detailed review in trusting LMCS's competence in drafting those documents.
I lost somewhere. Help me. Sorry. If you could repeat. Sorry.
Sure.
I lost somewhere.
Sure. So the end of that clause ends
Right.
with those documents that you see there listed
Yes.
will be reviewed by PARIA's representative.
Yes.
And in terms of the review, that review, you say, did not include any expert advice, correct?
What?
Like,
All right.
in terms of identifying the hazard, sir.
Right. So as I said, the way we built the system or we fashioned it is that we would go for the contractor who would bring specialized services to the facility. The development in particular, the method statement would belong to the contractor because they would be specialists and they would know what are the job steps for executing that job.
Right.
However, the risk assessment and the hazard analysis would be joint between the PARIA team and the contract team. But at the point of procurement, at the point of the tenders committee, the full development of the risk analysis and the hazard assessment is done once the contractor is selected. They do a site visit. That's a process that continues to run, right?
Yes, but you trusted LMCS to identify all the hazards. In that,
We believe, based on the track record that LMCS had, that they were competent enough to be able to identify the hazards. Yes, they had done the job, a very similar job not too long ago.
correct. So PARIA did not undertake to identify the hazards. Is that correct?
PARIA did not undertake. PARIA, together, working with the contractor over the period of the development of the project, would have engaged
I'm
with the
talking about the
contractor,
tender, sir.
would have engaged with the tender.
Yeah, LMCS would not be involved in evaluating the tender. That's PARIA.
But then the method statement, etc., would come fully developed by the contractor at the tender stage. So PARIA wouldn't have a role at the tender stage.
Correct. So you're saying that in evaluating the risk identified by LMCS, PARIA would not have done its own independent, or it would not have tried to identify those risks on its own accord.
In the method statement that was provided at the tender, is what you're saying?
But the job safety analysis, the emergency response plan, all the safety documents, sir. The risk assessment.
At the tender stage, LMCS would have presented PARIA with a set of documents that would have formed part of the package. PARIA would have assessed those documents based on what the pre-qualification was for that tender. I can't remember exactly what the pre-qualification was, and that would be the assessment done at the tender stage.
Correct.
Right?
So that they would not have, and we were on the same page here.
Okay.
They would not have identified or sought to identify independently the risks associated with the job. They would have trusted the competence of LMCS. Is that true?
I would say that PARIA would have assessed the package presented to it at the tenders committee based on the criteria that was set out by PARIA.
I see, based on the criteria.
Yes.
Now, I want to take you to the witness statement of Mr. Balkaran at page 1432 of the witness statement bundle.
This is the same witness statement bundle I'm looking at here?
I'm not quite sure.
Is it tabbed?
What page number are you asking for?
1432.
Is it tabbed?
It's volume 4 of the witness bundle. You probably had that removed. No, you should be the same bundle as the one you're in, yes.
I see volume
143.
No, this is up to 1027.
Sorry? 1432.
No, this would be here. This is 1027.
The tab should be 43, I believe.
The tab should be 43. No.
Sorry, 42.
No, I think 42 is what you mean, yes. It's the statement. It's the statement immediately before your own in your bundle, in the bundle.
43. Right.
And we're looking at paragraph 28.
28. Upon receipt?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And you see, among other things in that paragraph, Mr. Balkrant, in talking about evaluating the tender, says that he evaluated the suitability of the documents provided by LMCS. You see that?
Yeah.
Right, and now I want to take you to Mr. Archibald's witness statement at page 1317 of the witness statement bundle.
1317.
Yeah.
Is it tabbed?
My version is tabbed. I'll try to see if I can tell you what. 36. On my version.
Good.
I'm sorry, you've lost me. I need to.
Sure.
I'm just looking at paragraph 28 of Mr. Balkaran's statement. I read that. And where else do you want me to go?
Page 1317, the witness statement of Randolph Archibald.
1317, yes.
Almost said Archibald.
Yeah, 1317, I'm here.
Yes. So we're looking at paragraph 17.
Paragraph 17, yeah.
So in assessing the tender submission by LMCS, this is what Mr. Archibald says. In the instant case, the department assessed the HSC documents, namely the ERP, risk assessment, job hazard analysis, site-specific safety plan, etc., which was submitted by LMCS to PARIA in relation to the 36 T-line riser repairs at berth number 6. And then we go to the next page. Paragraph 18. The department's objectives.
Hold on. Paragraph 18, 17, 18. Okay, yeah.
With me?
Yeah.
The department's objectives in assessing the said documents were to ensure the following. So you see that he's saying that they were assessing the documents. Yes? Before we go further.
Go ahead.
1. That LMCS captured and properly identified all credible scenarios, potential risks, and hazards. You see that?
Yes.
But they did not have the competence to do that.
That PARIA is what?
PARIA did not have the competence, from what you said earlier to Mr. Mirage. They did not have the competence to ensure that LMCS captured and properly identified all credible scenarios, potential risk and hazards. Is that correct?
Yes.
Sorry?
No, just read it over one more time. I mean, I just have to go back to the process that we work, right? The credible scenarios for that specific work. We would have,
No, sir. We're looking at what Mr. Archibald says. I don't want to put words in his mouth. He is saying he assessed those documents. And in assessing those documents first, he tried to ensure, or the department rather, tried to ensure that LMCS captured and properly identified all credible scenarios, potential risks, and hazards. And my question to you is they were not, your evidence is that they were not competent to do so.
All credible risk scenarios. But I don't think that the issue we're talking about was a credible scenario that either us or LMCS identified.
But did they have the competence, sir?
I think the credible scenarios are the scenarios that we would have all kind of spoken about earlier in the discussion. It was not seen as a credible scenario by either us or LMCS.
Well, it wasn't seen at all, was it?
It wasn't seen at all.
No, right. So the question of credibility doesn't come into it, really. It wasn't spotted at all.
It wasn't spotted at all.
That, with the benefit of hindsight,
yes,
was a mistake.
Yes, it wasn't spotted
on
at all.
anyone's view.
Correct.
That it was not identified as a credible risk.
It was not.
And the only question that Mr. Hussain Shah is asking you is, as a matter of fact, your company didn't, through its HSE department, did not have the competence to have identified a credible risk outside of what LMCS themselves had identified. They didn't, did they?
We didn't identify a DP risk, so I can't disagree.
No, but if this is to have value, if what Mr. Archibald says is to have value, the fact is that they didn't have the competence to look at LMCS's assessment of risk and say, you're wrong, you missed something important. You didn't have the competence to do that, did you?
I can't argue against that. Okay.
Sorry?
Yeah.
That's right, isn't it?
I accept.
Yeah, all right. Does that
yes,
identify you?
Yes, Chair, thank you. And then he also says, and he had to ensure, the department had to ensure that LMCS properly assessed those credible scenarios, risks and hazards. But again, they did not have the competence to do so. Yes?
I can't argue against it.
And then we don't necessarily need to go through the rest, because those are the two main ones. I'm trying to
Okay.
save some time.
Okay.
But you'll see paragraph 19 says that upon that assessment, they found that the documents were satisfactory, but they could not. Correct?
Based on the logic of the question, I can't argue against it.
Thank you. Now, do you think during that assessment Mr. Archibald talks about, that expert assistance or input would have been invaluable?
I think I covered that already this morning and saying that's something for consideration.
Fair enough. And in your witness statement at paragraph 19, so that's at page 1445.
Yeah.
You talk about LMCS's past experience working for PARIA.
Yes.
And you identify that they worked two similar jobs
Yes.
to the one that is the subject of this inquiry.
Yes.
Now, those jobs would have been performed in compliance with PARIA's permit to work system, yes?
Yes.
And for those jobs, permits to work would have been issued.
Yes.
It would have been issued from the start of the job, and up to the completion of the job. Yes?
You mean different permits, right? Various permits would have been issued during that
for
time.
the similar jobs.
Yeah, various permits would have been issued.
Now, in those similar jobs, would they have also involved the installation of a migration barrier?
I'm certain that the job in 2020 involved the installation of a migration barrier.
And the job would have also involved the removal of a migration barrier.
Correct.
And that ought to have been captured in the permits to work for that job or those jobs.
Correct.
And in this inquiry, PARIA says that LMCS breached the permit to work system for this job.
Yes.
Now, in evaluating the breach, did you consider how the former jobs were completed? The methodology employed?
We didn't go, well, to be honest, I didn't go back to the former job. What I went back to is the permits to install the plug. So for this job, specific permits were given for installation of the plugs.
Yes.
And on the particular permit for the job on that day, there was a specific statement that said that those plugs were to remain in place. That is absolutely clear.
Where does it say that?
On the permit.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
Can we have the permit up, please? So you're not expected to remember the exact wording of this. You should have it in front of you.
Yeah. Well, let's put
I agree. It doesn't say anything about.
It mentioned migration barrier, not plugs.
Well, just a minute. I agree. It doesn't say anything about the plugs specifically. What I want to understand is you're saying that it specifically said not to remove them.
Come up. Migration barriers to be used.
Yes, well, they were being used. They were being used. They've been put in weeks before, or at least some days before. So, what is it you're trying to say? I just need to follow what you're saying.
But when I read this,
Yes.
let me tell you what my interpretation is.
Yes.
That during the execution of those activities outlined on the permit,
Yes.
that migration barrier was to remain in place until that job was completed. That is what I read.
Right, that's what you read into it, is it? But you agree it doesn't say that?
It doesn't say it specifically.
Well, when were they put in?
I
I don't need the exact date from you. I don't expect you to remember the exact
about
date.
A week before.
Yeah, it's some time before, right?
Yeah.
Right. So they were already in place?
Yes.
Right.
Once that hyperbaric chamber was in operation and people was in that hyperbaric chamber, those barriers were to be used.
For what reason?
Remember the reason that we would have discussed was two important things, right? One is the issue of fuel, gas from the fuel, or poisonous or potential harmful gases from the fuel getting into the hyperbaric chamber. Two, that while they were welding and welding were taking place, that we didn't have sparks or any kind of hot liquid getting into the pipeline, which probably still had hydrocarbon. Three, like everything else, you wouldn't want people. Remember, this is an open space, 30-inch open space. They also have the migration barrier to prevent tools, people, anything from tripping and falling into the space. Once people was inside of that hyperbaric chamber, and you had an open 30-inch space, typically in industry, all of those spaces are closed, surrounded, barred. That's normal industry practice. You don't leave an open 30-inch space where there's a possibility for people to fall into while they're working in an area. That's just standard industry practice.
Right, I got you.
It's almost like leaving, sir. It's almost like leaving a manhole without a cover. You wouldn't do it.
No, I understand. So the migration barrier to be used, you understand that sentence, if it is a sentence, you understand that to mean that the migration barrier had to be put in place in order to carry out works that were to take place on that
Inside
day.
the hyperbaric chamber, yes.
Yeah, but just so that I'm clear,
Yeah.
on the 25th of February,
Yeah.
it was already in place.
Yes.
Right, so it doesn't say anything about removing them or putting them in place. They were already there. Is that right?
You were already there. That is correct.
I mean, it's not as though... I just thought you were trying to suggest for a moment, in answer to a question from Mr. Hussein Shah, that the migration barrier was not to be removed, and it specifically said that. It doesn't say that, does it?
Doesn't specifically say that.
No, it doesn't specifically
those
say...
specific words.
No, it doesn't use those words. What it says is migration barrier to be used under the heading requirements for equipment, isolation and clearance. And then the subheading, cleared of process hazardous materials, answer yes, migration barrier to be used. So I follow all of that.
Yes.
I mean, you know, we've looked at this at some considerable length over the past few weeks.
Yes.
What I want to understand from you is that you understood that to mean that they should not be removed.
Correct. Once there were men inside of that chamber working, and that chamber was pressurized, and the potential for gases coming up into that chamber, those migration barriers would be in place. And the second thing that was in place was the gas testing to ensure that that environment remained breathable and free of contaminants. So the migration barrier was the actual solid barrier, and the gas testing was the confirmation that that area was clear of hazardous gases.
You agree, don't you, that this document, this work permit, says that the chamber, as we understood it, the hyperbaric chamber, is to be removed?
The hyperbaric chamber is to be removed
Yes.
at some point,
It
yes?
says remove. Well, not about at some point. This is the application
Right,
for
yeah,
work
remove the
on the
chamber.
25th of February.
Right. Remove chamber and blank top of the new riser,
Right,
yes?
so what it says is to remove and install a 50-inch flange.
Yes.
Remove and install a 30-inch riser pipe.
Yeah.
Remove a 30-inch solid blank.
Yeah.
Conduct pressure test on
Yes.
flange weld.
Yes.
Remove chamber and blank top of new riser.
That is correct.
Now, all of those things weren't done on that day, were they?
No, you didn't get to the point where the riser was removed. So the chamber, I'm sorry, let's recollect myself a bit. The chamber was not removed on that day.
No, it was removed the next day, but never mind about that. The point is, what I'm asking is the specific tasks that were appointed
Right.
and completed by the applicant.
So what was supposed to happen, based
Is-
on the permit, is the chamber was supposed to be depressured.
Yes.
Men out of the chamber now. It's depressured. Nobody's in the chamber.
You know, I understand how de-rigging the chamber would work.
And they
What
would
I want to understand from you,
Yes.
though, is that the migration barriers that
Yes.
you've identified as being mentioned in this document, which they
Yes.
are,
Yes.
those migration barriers to be used were to be used for the purposes that you've described.
Yes.
Gases from the fuel, sparks getting into the pipe, and other bits and pieces falling into the pipe, which you didn't want to happen, right?
Correct.
I get that.
Right.
Once that is no longer an issue, there was no question about removal of the barrier, was there? There was
Well-
no issue because nobody had identified delta P.
But they didn't identify delta P. However, the barrier was supposed to remain in place until the chamber was removed, right?
Why?
Why?
Yeah, why?
All right. So think about it like this, right? So we have men working in that chamber, right? As I said, the potential of gases come up into the chamber. So once
Yeah.
you had men working in that chamber.
No, once you've taken the chamber off, right?
Right. So once you take the chamber off, the delta P goes away. There's no pressure.
No, you're misunderstanding me.
Sorry.
It's probably my fault. Once you finished the job of work, so as to remove the chamber,
Right.
Once whatever else needed to be done
Right.
was done,
Right.
and you're going to remove the chamber,
Right.
why did you need to leave the plugs in?
the plugs, once nobody was working inside the chamber and the work was completed, there would have been no reason to keep the plugs in. But the plugs were to remain in until the chamber and was removed.
Why?
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 Right? And the reason for that is, once the chamber was removed, the potential for anybody working in an enclosed environment with the potential for gas ingress into that environment would have now completely gone away.
So you're saying that the plugs should not be removed because of the potential for gas coming from the pipe into the chamber while they were doing the plug removal?
Correct. Correct. And that gone, right? Okay. And okay, so I'll leave it there.
So when it says migration barrier to be used, that, in your mind at any rate, meant in order to prevent any gas.
That is correct. And that was the risk that we identified.
Okay. And would there have been any reason why you couldn't, for example, remove the mechanical plug before removing the pressure plug?
Typically, I would say that those plugs, we would move them together. You wouldn't want to move the mechanical and leave the only... In industry, there's a standard called double block and bleed, right? Which part you always try to have 2 blocks for gas ingress. So the mechanical block was a partial block, and your expanding block or your inflatable plug was the solid seal, right? So once that potential remained there, we had to have a double block. That's the system the industry used to ensure that people are not exposed to.
All right. So when you see this on the work permit,
yes,
under the heading cleared of process hazardous materials, answer yes, migration barrier to be used, that relates entirely to the question of gas escaping from the
correct, and things falling into the pipeline.
For the purposes of the safety of the people working in
correct.
And the fact that it says migration barrier to be used is not to mean anything other than that it is to be there for the entirety of the time that the men are inside that chamber. So the chamber, yes, in your mind, the chamber must come off first.
Yes. Chamber must come off first.
Not because of a delta P hazard, but
correct,
because of a gas hazard.
That is the risk that we identified.
Right.
Yes.
I see. Right. I don't know whether you're going to deal, Mr. Hussain Shah, with the method of work.
Now, previously to the chair's questions, we were talking about the previous works conducted by LMCS.
Yes.
And we were talking about whether you compared how those works were done to this job.
Yeah.
And what was your response?
No, I said that I haven't done a detailed study of how the previous jobs were done. I personally haven't done it.
But you would agree that PARIA's position is that LMCS, in executing this job, or executing the removal of the migration barrier and the inflatable plug, in the wrong order, ultimately resulted in the incident, the Delta P incident.
Yes, the chamber should have been depressurized and removed,
yes,
before those plugs were removed.
Yes. Now, in looking at the previous scope of works, or looking at the previous permit to works, were you able to identify how LMCS conducted the job? Whether this...
No, as I said, I didn't look at that detail on the last jobs. I didn't go into that level of inquiry into the permits and the exact work statements, etc. of the last job.
Do you think it would be important to compare how LMCS conducted the previous jobs to this job and identifying exactly how, where, or whether they got lucky in the past?
Yeah, I think there's value in doing that.
And would show the differences, especially if they remove the migration barrier at some later time.
Yeah, yes. There's some value in doing that, I would agree.
Now, would you be in a position to share those previous the permits to work with the Commission?
If it is a request from the Commission, we will comply.
Certainly we will ask the chair or the commission to consider, because there is some value in looking at the previous completion of the jobs, similar jobs, and in looking at this job, especially where an important aspect is Paria's position.
Yeah.
And LMCS essentially went into the wrong order.
Fair enough.
Yeah? Are you able to tell me what is the relationship between Paria and Heritage?
The relationship between Paria and Heritage.
Yes.
Structurally, Paria and Heritage are both subsidiaries of TPHL. So let's say we have a connection by being subsidiary of a overarching governing body, which is the TPHL board.
And does Heritage share certain expertise with Paria when required?
If requested, there would be no hesitation with Heritage sharing expertise with the Paria organization.
And are you aware that Mr. Rolf Seals, a Kenson employee, is attached to Heritage?
Yes.
And he assisted Paria
Yes.
with respect to the rescue and recovery.
Yes.
Would you agree that if it is that Paria had a dearth or had a vacuum of competence, that they could reach out to Heritage essentially and request assistance in the future?
Yeah, I think that's something that we have to consider.
Now, there's a lot of things to consider. I want to take you to paragraph 51 of your witness statement. That's at page 1451, 1451.
1451.
Yeah. And I don't need you to read the entire paragraph. Among other things, you say that diving into the pipeline was unsafe.
Yes.
And then you list various reasons why.
Yes.
Yeah? And you base this on not knowing the condition of the pipeline.
Yes.
And that there was no plan or risk analysis. Now, I'm not going to go into the risk analysis part because Learned Senior has dealt with that. But what I'm curious about, what were the conditions that you were trying to ascertain?
The conditions?
Yes.
The conditions really was the number, what was in the pipeline. Right? We know that the hyperbaric chamber would have tools, chain blocks, knives, construction equipment inside of the hyperbaric chamber. We don't know exactly all that was inside the hyperbaric chamber.
Yes.
We know that the pipe, at that time we believed that the pipe was filled with oil, and we know that there were sections of that pipe for sure that was completely, I would say, filled with oil and hazardous material. We didn't know at the time whether the potential for a subsequent DP event to take place. We had no idea whether the pipe was completely filled, whether we had difference in levels at the various vertical pieces. We didn't know exactly where the blockages were and how people would navigate around them. So those were some of the big issues that we didn't know exactly where the men were, how far they were in the pipeline. We don't know exactly what was the condition of the plug, where the plug was in the pipeline. A number of things that we just didn't know.
Sorry? What inside the pipeline contain other hazardous materials besides oil?
We don't know. Remember, that pipeline has not been in use for a number of years, so we just don't.
Right.
We just didn't know. We just didn't have that information.
But you had the information that Christopher Boodram came out, and I want to take you to the ICT bundle of documents at page 1541.
Page 1541. This is bundle
Yeah,
one.
not the witness statement bundle, the ICT bundle. Right, too far. Yeah. So we're looking at the top of the page. You're seeing 9:58 p.m.
Yes, no, hold on.
Sorry. Now you recall, sorry.
Just a minute, please. Page?
1541.
No, that's the wrong one. Yep.
Now you recall a conversation which occurred in your presence between the incident command team and Mr. Boodram.
Yes.
And do you identify these scribbles? So you could read through them. Do you identify these scribbles as the contemporaneous notes taken of that conversation? So I can help you read it. 40 feet from Raf, from riser, I think. 2 air pockets and went down. Faisal couldn't be found. Broken hand and foot. Everyone tried to pull. Reach in an air pocket. Only Faizi answer. Another part with water. Faizi had tank on him. Couldn't climb out the water at the top of the flange. Felt 2 well seams.
Yeah.
Does that accurately summarize the conversation that occurred in your presence?
I can't recall each and every point, but yes, some of it resonates with me. Yes, some of it resonates with me.
And I want you to look at paragraph 66 of your witness statement. And that's at page 1454.
Paragraph 66?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
You accept, so I'm looking at subpoint 4. He
Yeah.
crossed blacks who was unresponsive.
Yes.
You accept that that statement appears nowhere in the handwritten note. Do you?
Yeah, it's not there, so it's not there.
Thank you. You would have had the information that both Mr. Boodram and Mr. Kurban, so Boodram coming out of the pipeline, the information ought to have reached you that he said, the boy is right behind me. Do you recall that?
Yes, go ahead.
And Mr. Kurban would have also come out of the pipeline. So that, at least at that time, with proper equipment, a rescue may have been possible. Because when you speak about what the camera is supposed to see, oil, knives, tanks, gear, all those things would have either been navigated through by Mr. Boodram or Mr. Kurban, whatever limited space he went into or whatever limited depth he went into. He would have either come across it. But either way, you had the information that Mr. Boodram would have crossed all those obstacles, if should they exist.
And probably also may have left some behind.
Like what?
I don't know. Mr. Boodram, how did he come out? Did he have tanks that he used?
Yes.
Did those tanks became deposited along the line? I don't know how many tanks Mr. Boodram would have used to come out and what he would have left in his wake coming out of the pipeline.
But you didn't seek to find out.
I disagree with that. I seek to find out using a method that was safe without putting people's lives at risk.
And you think a camera would tell you whether a tank could move?
I don't understand the question.
You're saying that there may have been obstacles which would have prevented movement. So I'm asking whether you're suggesting or whether it is your position that a camera would have identified unmovable obstacles like a tank or be able to prove that it's unmovable or unnavigatable?
What we had expected is that we would have been able to move around the tanks, be able to identify exactly where they were located, at least as a minimum identify where they were located, identify where we had oil, where we had water, identify where the men were, so that we could have properly risk assessed and understand the perils or the hazards that a diver would meet entering that pipeline. We know that the diver couldn't turn into the pipeline, so we'd either have to go head first or foot first. Not sure what direction he would choose. Typically, head first would always be pointed on the way out. So how that diver would be going into the pipeline, he would be backing into the pipeline. Wouldn't it be prudent for that diver who's going in without eyes into that pipeline to have an idea where these obstacles were and how he would likely deal with them when he meet them? Wouldn't it be prudent for that diver who's going into that pipeline? Yeah.
Hold on. And what are your diving qualifications, sir?
Look, listen, that's just thinking through it. And if you think through it, you'll probably come to the same conclusion. It's just thinking through it.
I'm not a diver, so I wouldn't try to.
Okay.
Now, I want to take you to Mr. Archibald's statement again, at page 1320. Now, this is Mr. Archibald seeking to talk about what a safe dive may entail.
What page, sir?
1320 at paragraph 37.
Paragraph 37. 1320. Paragraph 37, right?
Yeah. So he says, I believed it was unsafe to dive within the pipeline at that time without a continuous air supply with a tank and a tether. The rescue divers would have had at least needed a rope with them and a supply of air. They would have needed a tank to be on them as an emergency air supply in case their regular air supply was interrupted. Air and a means of communication and extraction were the three things they needed for any rescue dive inside the pipeline to be safe. And what say you?
I say they probably needed that and also an understanding of the risk that they would face going into the pipeline.
Sure. And now, can we bring up the, I'm not sure whether it made its way into a bundle, but I believe Mr. Piper would have supplied us with the standard operating procedures for confined space rescue. I'm not quite sure whether it's in a bundle. It is? So I want to go to 3.2.
Do I have it here?
I'm not quite sure. Now we're looking at the confined, oh sorry. Let me know when you're with me.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm with you.
Now we're looking at the confined space entrance. Yeah? Now a suitably qualified diver ought to know the hazards associated with entering a confined space.
Depends what his experience is. He could be suitably qualified and never dive into a pipeline or a confined space.
And are you aware what the training is in order to become a commercial diver?
No.
So you're not in a position to say?
Well, I didn't say yes or no. I said there's a possibility that he would have never dived into a pipeline.
Yeah, but these are PARIA's. This is PARIA's document.
About confined space?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, it's the closest thing we have. So we have know the hazards and know how to use all required equipment. Do you believe a commercial diver would know how to use the required equipment? You can answer.
Yes, sir. We have a situation.
Okay, the question starts with, do you believe? I'd appreciate whether you can answer the question, then maybe,
Ask the question again, sorry.
sure. Would you agree that a commercial diver, or commercial divers, would know how to use the required equipment for a confined space?
Not necessarily.
All right. And do you believe that they would be able to have a means of communication with the attendant? And the attendant being the person tethering them, or that person.
That they should have that if they were entering a confined space?
Yeah? And
Yeah.
that they would be suitably trained in how to communicate with the attendant.
It's probably part of the training, yes.
And they would know how to be alert to hazardous conditions.
Not
So
the,
if they go
not,
into the pipeline,
not the ones that they were completely unaware of.
well, if they came up against something that they decided they couldn't go further, I'm sure
So,
they will
I mean,
communicate, which is the point of the
I
attendant.
want to be respectful.
Yes.
So the ifs and the mays,
No, I'm just taking you through
I'm
the
just
SOP.
I'm just saying that the if and the mays and they should and they could and all that. And what the objective is this, is putting a man into a pipeline where we are unclear of all the hazards. Should I make that decision on may, he might? Is that a decision? Are those the things that I make a decision on to put a man's life at risk?
And the-
Or do I have specific and clear understanding of the risk under which I am going to subject this man to? Just give it some thought.
I mean, the thought you need to give as well is that there were commercial divers present.
Commercial dive.
I'm-
Let's stay quiet.
There were commercial divers present at least close to 7 o'clock. They were supported by 2 vessels with unlimited supply of air. They were supported with the equipment, the qualifications, the supervision. They would have been able, had Paria, maybe, fair enough. But they were supported. Do you agree? They had the equipment.
Listen.
No. Did they have the equipment? It's either you know or you don't know.
A dive plan is more than the equipment.
Did you try to get a dive plan from them?
I think I answered that earlier.
No, you said LMCS. Did you try to get a dive plan from,
We attempted to get a dive plan
how?
from other professional diving companies that were present at Paria.
Yeah, that was on Saturday. I talking about Friday. On Friday, 7 p.m. or in 8 p.m. Did you attempt to get a dive plan from the divers on site?
A dive plan, whatever dive plan was presented was unacceptable.
Was a dive plan presented?
All we had was some verbal mutterings of what that might look like, but no clear
Did
plan.
you communicate? I'm not talking about LMCS. I'm talking about with the other divers. Did you communicate with them?
I personally did not communicate with them. I thought I'd answered that already.
Did anyone from the ICT communicate with them and seek to get a plan from them on Friday?
We have actually
my
been through this.
understanding-
Yeah, pause there.
Yeah, thanks.
In fairness to you, we have actually covered this ground
Yeah.
already. I don't think we need to cover it again.
Fair enough. Now, when did Paria first consider the use of a waiver of liability for persons who may want to dive into the pipeline?
I don't recall. Maybe on Saturday, I'm not sure.
And did PARIA communicate to any of the other divers their willingness to accept a waiver of liability?
No.
Why?
You see, I thought I addressed that earlier on by saying this was not only a question of liability, this was also a question of the decision point in terms of what information do we need to have so that we could send a man in and get him out safely with a rescue plan.
He put it as an ethical question. He
Sure.
suggested it was a question not just of liability but of ethics.
Now, when did PARIA consider the use of non-disclosure agreements?
Non-disclosure agreements?
Yes. If you need some help to refresh, I believe it's the
Well, I need some
supplemental.
help to understand the relevance.
In Mr. Fuentes' new statement or email that was disclosed, he makes
Yeah.
reference to a non-disclosure agreement.
So,
I just wanted to know when was that considered and why was it considered?
why is it relevant to anything? Just tell me, explain relevance, and I'll let you answer it.
Sure. In terms of the ability for persons to communicate freely and the limits of that non-disclosure agreement,
Relating to,
the incident and discussing it with others.
right, non-disclosure as in preventing anyone from being able to say anything about it after the event.
Correct.
Right, all right. Yes?
I can't recall.
It did, first of all, PARIA consider the question of non-disclosure agreements to prevent people from being able to say anything about what happened on this occasion. Was there any such consideration by PARIA?
There was consideration of non-disclosure agreement and the use of cell phones at the recovery. What we didn't want is to have, we wanted to respect the families, and that was the reason for it at that
Didn't
time.
want it to what, sorry?
We didn't want people to have cell phones and be free to communicate information around the recovery and things. So that would have been somewhere around Monday or Tuesday. That's my recollection of the use of non-disclosure agreements by PARIA.
Of
that
its
was a
own
specific-
staff or of everyone else?
Everyone else, everyone, staff, people who were attendants at the,
Because you used WhatsApp, didn't you, or some other text communication between
they had to be authorized by the ICT.
Yes.
No, I want to go to the supplemental witness statement bundle at page 3157.
3157.
This is Mr. Fuentes' new statement or email statement. And you go into...
You have a tab on it?
No, unfortunately.
Okay.
84? 84, yeah. Oh, 84.
Supplemental statement, are you? Just a minute. Which one? Witness bundle? Page what?
3157.
Yes.
I have it here.
It's behind tab 83. 84. It is tab 84.
Tab 84.
Yeah. You have the supplemental statement there? Yeah.
Yes, I have tab 84.
It's an email. Is that what you're referring
Yes.
to, the email?
Yes. I believe this is the only statement we have from Mr. Fuentes.
Yes.
So look some ways down, you'll see a sentence saying, I was asked to fill out a NDA document which I complied with. But there was no issue of cell phones with Fuentes.
I told you what I could have recalled. I haven't seen the statement until now.
So you're unable to assist us with the purpose of requiring an NDA from Mr. Fuentes or from anyone else.
I mean, well, I think typically, you know, incidents like these, you'd always want to make sure that information isn't, or there is some, how would I call it? There is some caution with how information is shared.
How many persons signed NDA agreements? Are you able to
I
say?
can't recall.
Do you have a general number, or you just don't know?
I do have a general number, and I wouldn't hazard a guess.
Fair enough. Now I want to take you back to your witness statement at paragraph 1441.
Paragraph 1441. Just tab me along so I can be quick.
Sorry?
You have the tab?
Oh, it's your witness statement. You might have to help me find it out.
All right.
43.
I think I find it. 43, yes.
Right, so it's paragraph 5.
Paragraph 5.
But I'm specifically going to page 1442.
1442?
Yeah. And you say, as part of your roles and responsibilities.
Establish clear. Which one exactly? 4, 5, 6?
Yeah, I'm going to get there.
Okay.
But you list out your roles and responsibilities.
Yes.
And as part of your roles and responsibilities, you say you champion a culture of continuous performance improvement and learning environment.
Yeah.
That's number 11. And at number 7,
Right.
you say you drive major transformations to increase safety, environmental performance, reliability, quality, delivery, and/or financial performance. Yes?
Yes.
Now, did PARIA prepare an investigation report, an incident investigation report?
PARIA prepared an investigation report, yes, an internal investigation.
Did you have a role in the preparation of that report?
No.
Did you review the contents of that report?
Yes.
So I want to go to page 1765 of the witness statement bundle. But the report starts at 1743. Yeah?
One 743, right?
That's where the report starts, but we're going to, firstly, 1763.